That was our foghorn.
Okay.
And
I'm starting the recorder now. Don't forget to start yours.
I already did. Thank you. Good evening. Please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting will be recorded so that we can put it onto our website, our podcast, and our YouTube channel. We record in audio only. Feel free to use the podcast on our website along with your big book as a resource if you missed the study portion of the meeting. The study portion is also listed on the website so that you can follow along. Tonight's recap will start on page 127 where it says the head of the house, and it will end on page 129 at will quickly disappear. And our study tonight will start on page 129, the opposite may happen, and will end on page 131 with make up the deficiency. And do we have any announcements?
My name is Jamie. Hi, family. My name is Jamie. Very grateful, recovered alcoholic. We have second quarter assembly coming up in May on the 28th through the 30th, which means that we will be having group conscience on the 17th and a trusted servants meeting on the 16th to see if there's anything that we need to talk about. So, that being said, that's pretty much it. If you got issues and you need tissues, buy the tissues and bring your issues. I will say this about our group conscience. If you're not a home group member, come and join us. See how our group operates. See if you like the way that we operate. And we try and do things by the tradition, and maybe it will encourage you to become a little more part of the group, which is a place to become of service. The other thing is that if you're not a home group member, you won't be able to vote, but we would certainly love to have your input on what you think. And we will take that into considerations in our votes. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, and good evening, everyone. I'm a recovered alcoholic, and my name is Shayna.
Shayna.
Hi. Welcome to the Lewisburg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group. To prepare for our Big Book study, let's get focused by having a 3-minute moment of meditation, followed by our family's fog light prayer.
And I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name is Trish. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to start the meditation in a minute, so please take a moment to get situated.
Please be aware of background noises when you are unmuted and sharing, as not to distract others or yourself. We suggest we all observe proper Zoom etiquette. If you wouldn't do it in a live meeting, please don't do it here. A friendly reminder, the absence of profanity offends no one. Please keep yourself muted during someone else's share. We will call on you in the order hands are raised.
From the foreword to the first edition of Alcoholics Anonymous. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are many thousands of men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book and of this group.
For the meditation, some suggestions are focus your breath and posture, breathe in God, and breathe out self.
Take this time to reconnect with God. Let the craziness of the day drift away and ask God to help you focus on the study. Spotlight Prayer. Coming soon to a screen near you. God, let your love shine through us like a fog light, so that those who are lost, sick, and dying can find your love through us. Amen.
And let's have our secretary's report. Come on in, Shayla.
Hi, my name is Shayla, and I'm your recovered alcoholic secretary. I've asked Larry to read the recovery statement. We read this notice to explain why many people in this group identify as recovered rather than recovering, and what it exactly means to be a recovered alcoholic. Take it away, Larry.
I'm Larry. Recovered. We are not cured of alcoholism. Recovered but not cured. That presents a conflict to some alcoholics. If we were cured, we would be able to drink responsibly. No, we are not cured. The allergic reaction to alcohol will remain with us for a lifetime, but we have been restored to sanity. That was the problem. The main problem of alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. Page 23. We are now sane where alcohol is concerned. Consequently, we have recovered.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you for joining us tonight. We meet every Tuesday starting at 5:30 p.m. Central Time with the Gerbil Fellowship Cage, where we chatted for an hour before the start of the meeting. Feel free to bring side dishes to share with the buzzards. Our Big Book study starts promptly at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and we ask that you be courteous and ready to begin at the sound of the foghorn. We take our Big Book study seriously. Because of this, chat will be disabled during the study. In the 1940s, when the only element to sobriety were God, a big book, and one recovered alcoholic working with an untreated alcoholic, the success rate was as follows. From the forward to the second edition of the Alcoholics Anonymous, page XX of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapsed, and the remainder, those who stayed on with AA, showed improvement. Can we have a show of hands of people joining us for the first time?
Welcome, Tim. Glad you're here with us.
And then the recovered alcoholics. These are your potential sponsors. Is anyone celebrating a milestone this week?
I don't see any.
If you should require a big book of your own, we have large print editions available that can be sent to you by buzzard mail. Delivery time questionable. Please remember to practice our 7th tradition by donating to the group address, Venmo, or PayPal posted in chat on the screen. Our suggestion is to purchase a big book and take an untreated alcoholic through the program of recovery. Please visit our website, posted in the chat. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Shayla, and thank you, Shayna. From Chapter 2, there is a solution. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism.
This is an open meeting, and as such, all who have an interest in alcoholism and our program of recovery are welcome. Because this is an open meeting, you need not identify yourself, nor your reason for being here if you do not wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected. We ask that you protect ours.
While this is an open meeting, membership in this group is limited to those who wish to recover from alcoholism and have a desire to stop drinking for good and all. Each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is a potential sponsor of a new member and should clearly recognize the obligations and duties of such a responsibility.
Hey, and before we begin our study of the Big Book, last week we reviewed Tradition 2. And tonight, let's take a quick look at Tradition 3. Please refer to page 562 of Alcoholics Anonymous. And may we have our traditionalist. Is that Larry?
Lisa.
Lisa! Oh, Lisa, I knew that. I'm so sorry.
No problem. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm your traditionalist. Tonight, we're on Tradition 3. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking, the short form. And the long form, our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. Hence, we may refuse none who wish to recover, nor ought AA membership ever depend upon money or conformity. Any 2 or 3 alcoholics gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided that, as a group, they have no other affiliation. And I'm going to share with you guys a story I was reading today, which I thought would be appropriate. It's called Are We Locked In? I went to a meeting this last Saturday night. The usual stuff was happening. You know, hot coffee and people laughing and sharing. We started the meeting with the preamble, a reading and a topic. Then a wet drunk came in. He staggered in, found a chair, and pronounced he was an alcoholic. You could tell that the man lived on the streets. I thought, oh, this is wonderful. I had a new sponsee there, first meeting since treatment. She was nervous, and so were the other newcomers. I said, it's okay, we need him. To my surprise, the woman chairing the meeting was angry, along with 3 other people, all 4 with several years of sobriety. They told the man if he couldn't be quiet, he'd have to leave. They were louder than he was. In a short time, the woman and one of the men got up and escorted the alcoholic out the door. One of them told him to shut up. In a few minutes, he came back in, said he'd be quiet, and sat back down. But being drunk, he couldn't be good enough. Again, they began to escort him to the door. I was angry and said he had a right to be there. The 3rd tradition ensures him a place, but they wouldn't hear me. This time they had locked him out. I was shocked, appalled, and angry. I was always told that the only requirement is a desire to stop drinking, that any alcoholic is a member if he says he is. I didn't realize we could say, no, not you. You're dirty, drunk, and noisy. One gentleman told me that if a drunk is disruptive, then we have a right to kick him out. I thought, how intolerant. I wonder how many times we as drunks were disruptive in bars and restaurants, on the streets. Weren't we disruptive when we were out there? How many times I had come home drunk to disrupt my family, neighbors, and friends. I wonder where I'd be if, when I came to my first meeting, I had been locked out. My last hope locked away from me. It is scary that one alcoholic could lock another out. The 12 and 12 mentions early intolerance based on fear. I saw a lot of fear that evening. Some didn't want to see the dirty drunk. I guess he reminded them from where they came from. Our pride gets hurt once we're cleaned up. The 5th tradition states that each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. I wonder if they felt he wasn't suffering enough. There were 4 people who said they wanted to drink that day after our friend was there. None of them had the desire to drink. There were 5 newcomers that night. All of them were confused. Why do we say that all alcoholics are welcome and then throw one out and lock the door? I am worried about what message we carry to the newcomers. Where are our principles? Where is our compassion, our tolerance? And where is our future going to be if we lock the door on the newcomers? How can we survive, grow, and carry out our primary purpose without the drunks? Will the hand of Alcoholics Anonymous be there if you or I get drunk? How would Bill W. or Dr. Bob feel about locking out a drunk? Well, I need to say the Serenity Prayer. I like that one. I know a few times in my drinking career, or when I was trying to get sober, when I made the call to Central Service, that hand was there for me. And some wonderful women who from my area that came and picked me up and took me to a meeting. And one of those times was the end of COVID. And I didn't know anything about the Zoom at that time. But I'm very glad it was there for me. And yeah, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you for your service in the last 3 weeks. And we will have a new traditionalist next week. And now it's time for our weekly installment of That Ain't in the Book. We hear a lot of stuff said in meetings that can't be reconciled with the program as described in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. What follows is one of the things we often hear, along with what the Big Book has to say on the subject. And one of the things we hear a lot is there are no musts in the program. William, can you come in and tell us what it says about that on page 99, paragraph 2, please?
Yes, it's right here in the Big Book. My name is William Alcoholic, but we must try to repair the damage immediately, lest we pay the penalty by us free. Thank you. That's the must.
Thank you, William. And as we study, please make use of the pens, highlighters, and rulers so that you can share this experience with another alcoholic.
In order for us to stay focused as we study the Big Book, we use the Big Book Study Guide prepared by Joe and Charlie and Krusty Cliff of the Dallas Primary Purpose Group.
And tonight we're going to start our recap on page 127, followed by our study portion. I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was going to be read by. I want to say Larry again,
Susan.
But I'm making Larry volunteered for everything. Marilyn.
Susan has got the recap, and then Jim will read the study.
Well, I'm way off. So, okay, so Susan, our recap on page 127, and then followed by
Jim.
Jim. Yay! And that will be starting on page 129. And then after the page is read, we will ask questions from the imaginary podium, starting back on our study portion that was read by Jim. The answers will be one sentence unless otherwise specified, and multi-part questions are simply a one-sentence answer split up by commas, semicolons, hyphens, and other fun bits of punctuation.
Basically, in English, what that means is we're going to read the material once through, and then dissect the information a second time through the question and answer format. Notice how the language in the questions gives us a new light in which to consider the study material.
This is important because hearing the question and rereading the content offers a definite way of comprehending the material covered. After we've completed the study, we open up for a comment, questions, and observations based on what was just read. If you have spiritual experiences with this information, you are free to share. Please keep your share on topic and under 5 minutes. At the 5-minute mark, you may hear a timer beep to let you know that your time is finished.
However, Big Book study is not therapy. Should you begin sharing on topics which are more appropriately discussed in a different setting, for example with a sponsor, please do not be offended when we cut that conversation short and send the buzzards nipping at your heels. For that purpose, we have fellowship meetings before and after our study time.
You can never go wrong by commenting on the pages studied, which bring us to the words of one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. Sobriety, freedom from alcohol, through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps, is the sole purpose of any Alcoholics Anonymous group.
And how we arrived at this point, and most of us have been here before, so I will make this brief. This meeting started as an in-person meeting in January of 2020, and like the rest of the world, shut down for a little bit, and then came back on Zoom, first as hybrid, and then as completely on Zoom. So we don't meet in person anywhere, except once a year when we all converge on Jamie's house for pickle party around July 4th. It's a 94-week study. It takes us about a year and a half to go through the entire book, and we start on the title page. We read the preface, the forewords, every sentence, every line through the end of page 194. We also study Dr. Bob's Nightmare and the traditions. And when the asterisk tells us, we visit the spiritual experience, Appendix 2, during the study. And on our 94th week of the study, we do the spiritual experience all by itself, just because that spirituality is such an important part of our way of life. And then when we finish, we go all the way back to the beginning and start again. So right this week, we are on week 75 of 94 weeks. We're in our third year, or our third season going through the book. And once we finish that, we will be starting our fourth time through the book. And we will soon be coming up on our 5th year anniversary as a Zoom meeting. So stay tuned to see what we have planned for that.
Before we start the recap, we'll need 5 or 6 virtual hands raised if you would like to be one of our answer readers. So please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting will be recorded so that we can put it onto our website and our YouTube channel.
So Susan, come on in with our recap, please.
Hi, my name is Susan. I'm an alcoholic and sort of the head of the house. The head of the house ought to remember that he is mainly to blame for what befell his home. He can scarcely square the account in his lifetime, but he must see the danger of over-concentration on financial success. Although financial recovery is on the way for many of us, we found we could not place money first. For us, material well-being always followed spiritual progress. It never preceded. Since the home has suffered more than anything else, it is well that a man exert himself there. He is not likely to get far in any direction if he fails to show unselfishness and love under his own roof. We know there are difficult wives and families, but the man who is getting over alcoholism must remember he did much to make them so. As each member of a resentful family begins to see his shortcomings and admits them to the others, he lays a basis for helpful discussion. These family talks will be constructive if they can be carried on without heated argument, self-pity, self-justification, or resentful criticism. Little by little, mother and children will see they ask too much, and father will see he gives too little. Giving rather than getting will become the guiding principle. Assume, on the other hand, that father has, at the outset, a stirring spiritual experience. Overnight, as it were, he is a different man. He becomes a religious enthusiast. He is unable to focus on anything else. As soon as his sobriety begins to be taken as a matter of course, the family may look at their strange new dad with apprehension, then with irritation. There is talk about spiritual matters morning, noon, and night. He may demand that the family find God in a hurry, or exhibit amazing indifference to them, and say he is above worldly considerations. He may tell Mother, who has been religious all her life, that she doesn't know what it's all about, and that she had better get his brand of spirituality while there is yet time. When Father takes this tack, the family may react unfavorably. They may be jealous of a God who has stolen Dad's affections. While grateful that he drinks no more, they may not like the idea that God has accomplished the miracle where they failed. They often forget Father was beyond human aid. They may not see why their love and devotion did not straighten him out. Dad is not so spiritual after all, they say. If he means to right his past wrongs, why all this concern for everyone in the world but his family? What about his talk that God will take care of them? They suspect Father is a bit balmy. He is not so unbalanced as they might think. Many of us have experienced Dad's elation. We have indulged in spiritual intoxication, like a giant prospector belt drawn in over the last ounce of food. Our pick struck gold. Joy at our release from a lifetime of frustration knew no bounds. Father feels he has struck something better than gold. For a time he may try to hug the new treasure to himself. He may not see at once that he has barely scratched a limitless load which will pay dividends only if he mines it for the rest of his life and insists on giving away the entire product. If the family cooperates, Dad will soon see that he is suffering from a distortion of values. He will perceive that his spiritual growth is lopsided, that for an average man like himself, a spiritual life which does not include his family obligations may not be so perfect after all. If the family will appreciate that Dad's current behavior is but a phase of his development, all will be well. In the midst of an understanding and sympathetic family, these vagaries of Dad's spiritual infancy will quickly disappear.
Thank you, Susan. And Jim, come on in and read this week's study.
Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. This is this week's study. The opposite may happen should the family condemn and criticize. Dad may feel that for years his drinking has placed him on the wrong side of every argument, but that now he has become a superior person with God on his side. If the family persists in criticism, this fallacy may take a still greater hold on Father. Instead of treating the family as he should, he may retreat further into himself and feel he has a spiritual justification for doing so. Though the family does not fully agree with Dad's spiritual activities, they should let him have his head. Even if he displays a certain amount of neglect and irresponsibility towards the family, it is well to let him go as far as he likes in helping other alcoholics. During those first days of convalescence, this will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else. Though some of his manifestations are alarming and disagreeable, we think Dad will be on a firmer foundation than the man who is placing business or professional success ahead of spiritual development. He will be less likely to drink again, and anything is preferable to that. Those of us who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. This dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives. We have come to believe He would like us to keep our heads in the clouds with Him, but that our feet ought to be firmly planted on earth. That is where our fellow travelers are, and that is where our work must be done. These are realities for us. We have found nothing incompatible between a powerful spiritual experience and a life of sane and happy usefulness. One more suggestion. Whether the family has spiritual convictions or not, they may do well to examine the principles by which the alcoholic member is trying to live. They can hardly fail to approve these simple principles, though the head of the house still fails somewhat in practicing them. Nothing will help the man who is off on a spiritual tangent so much as the wife who adopts a sane spiritual program, making a better practical use of it. There will be other profound changes in the household. Vicar incapacitated father for so many years that mother became head of the house. She met these responsibilities gallantly. By force of circumstances, she was often obliged to treat father as a sick or wayward child. Even when he wanted to assert himself, he could not, for his drinking placed him constantly in the wrong. Mother made all the plans and gave directions. When sober, father usually obeyed. Thus, mother, through no fault of her own, became accustomed to wearing the family trousers. Father, coming suddenly to life again, often begins to assert himself. This means trouble, unless the family watches for these tendencies in each other and comes to a friendly agreement about them. Drinking isolates most homes from the outside world. Father may have lain aside for years all normal activities, clubs, civic duties, sports. When he renews interest in such things, a feeling of jealousy may arise. The family may feel they hold a mortgage on Dad, so big that no equity should be left for outsiders. Instead of developing new channels of activities for themselves, mother and children demand that he stay home and make up the deficiency.
Thank you, Jim. And we're now going to go back to the portion that Jim just read. And for our answer readers, please speak clearly into your microphones. We'll ask the questions from our script from Joe and Charlie and Krusty Cliff. And the answers to the questions will be sentence by sentence coming directly out of this week's study, what Jim just read, beginning with the first sentence he read and ending with the last one. And if anyone answering the questions loses their place, please allow me to redirect them so we don't have too many people talking at once. So our batting order tonight is going to be Marilyn, Kenny, Susan, Nancy, Larry, and William. And Marilyn, and all of you can go ahead and unmute. And Marilyn, you'll have our first question. And that is, the opposite will happen if the family does what?
The opposite may happen should the family condemn and criticize.
Thank you. And Kenny, a two-part question. A, Dad will recognize what? And B, but now he sees himself how?
Dad may feel that for years his drinking has placed him on the wrong side of every argument, but that now he has become a superior person with God on his side.
Thank you. That's it. Stopping at his side. And Susan, if the family doesn't let up, what will happen?
I'm sorry, Trish. I heard Susan talking. I didn't realize she was a reader. I muted her, so she'll have to unmute. My apologies.
Okay, where are we at, Trish, please?
If the family doesn't let up, what will happen? And your answer starts with, if the family persists. Third sentence down.
Well, I got really lost.
Okay, I will skip you and come back to you next round.
Okay.
So, Nancy, if the family doesn't let up, what will happen? And Nancy looks like she's stepped away. So, Larry, are you with us?
Yes. If the family persists in the criticism, this fallacy may take a still greater hold on father.
Thank you. And William, instead of becoming a member of the family again, what usually happens?
Instead of treating the family as he should, he may retreat further into himself and feel he has spiritual justification for doing so.
Thank you. Back to you, Marilyn. If the family disagrees with Dad, what should they do?
Though the family does not fully agree with Dad's spiritual activities, they should let him have his head.
Thank you. And Kenny, if he is not attentive to the family, it is a good idea to let him do what?
Even if he displays a certain amount of neglect and irresponsibility towards the family, it is well to let him go as far as he likes in helping other alcoholics.
Thank you so much. Susan, are you with us?
I want to be.
Okay.
Can you tell me the page number, please?
The bottom of page 129, the last sentence. Your question will be, in the early part of his sobriety, is his activity really important? And you will be starting with during those first days.
During those first days of convalescence, this will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else.
Perfect, thank you. And Larry, two-part question. A, how do some of his actions appear? And B, we believe he will ultimately be on a firmer foundation than who?
Though some of his manifestations are alarming and disagreeable, we think Dad will be on a firmer foundation than the man who is placing business or professional success ahead of spiritual development.
Thank you so much. And William, he will be less likely to do what?
You will be less likely to drink again.
Keep going.
And anything is preferable to that.
Thanks so much. And Marilyn, back to you. What have those of us who have gone spiritual balmy finally done?
Those of us who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childness of it.
Thank you so much. And Kenny, another two-part question for you. A, what has our dream world been replaced with? And B, it was accompanied by what?
This dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives.
Thank you. And Susan, what have we come to believe?
We have come to believe he would like us to keep our heads in the clouds with him, but that our feet ought to be firmly planted on earth.
Thank you. And Larry, why is this?
That is where our fellow travelers are, and that is where our work must be done.
Absolutely. And William, what are these for us?
Okay. These are the realities for us.
Thank you. And Marilyn, back to you again. We have found no incompatibility between what two aspects of our lives?
We have found that nothing incompatible between a powerful spiritual experience and a life of sane and happy usefulness.
Thank you.
And I have a comment. Many of those experienced with our spiritual program declare that it proves to be the most practical thing they have ever done.
Thank you, Shayna. And Kenny, back to you. What is another suggestion?
One more suggestion. Whether the family has spiritual convictions or not, they may do well to examine these principles by which the alcoholic member is trying to live.
Thank you. And Susan, a two-part question for you. A, what will they find hard to disapprove of? And B, even though the alcoholic may do what?
They can hardly fail to approve these simple principles, though the head of the house still fails somewhat in practicing them.
Thank you so much. And Larry, what has proved to be a great help to the alcoholic?
Nothing will help the man who is off on a spiritual tangent so much as the wife who adopts a sane spiritual program making a better practical use of it.
And William, in what other area will there be changes?
There will be other profound changes in the household.
Thank you. And Marilyn, while Dad was drinking, what was Mother becoming?
Liquor incapacitated father so many years that mother became head of the house.
Thank you. And Kenny, how did she do?
He met these responsibilities gallantly.
Thank you.
Gallantly.
And Susan, because of drinking, she was forced to do what?
By force of circumstances, she was often obliged to treat father as a sick or wayward child.
Thank you. And Larry, even when he tried, what would happen?
Even when he wanted to assert himself, he would not, for his drinking placed him constantly in the wrong.
Thank you. And William, what did Mother do?
Mother made all these plans and gave the direction.
Thank you. And Marilyn, back to you. When would Father do what he was told?
When sober, father usually obeyed.
Thank you. And Kenny, by default, Mother became what?
Thus, Mother, through no fault of her own, became accustomed to wearing the family trousers.
Thank you. And Susan, now that Dad is sober, what will he attempt to do?
Father coming suddenly to life again often begins to assert himself.
Thank you. And Larry, this could lead to trouble unless they do what?
This means trouble unless the family watches for these tendencies in each other and comes to a friendly agreement about them.
Thank you. And William, drinking isolates from what from what?
Drink and isolate most homes from the outside world.
Sure does. And Marilyn, Father may have abandoned what other part of his life while drinking?
Father may have laid aside for years all normal activities, clubs, civic duties, or sports.
Thank you. And Kenny, when he gets involved in these things again, what might happen?
When he renews interest in such things, a feeling of jealousy may arise.
Thank you. And Susan, what may the family feel?
The family may feel they hold a mortgage on Dad so big that no equity should be left for outsiders.
Thanks so much. And Larry, you get our final question for the night. Instead of getting back into normal activities, the family may do what?
Instead of developing new channels of activity for themselves, mother and children demand that he stay home and make up the deficiency.
Thank you. And everybody can now go ahead and remute and take their hands down. And if you have experience with the portion of the book that we just read, you are free to share. Please be mindful of your time and that others may have their hands raised and are waiting to share. And a friendly reminder, once more as we're sharing, absence of profanity offends no one. We're now going to open up for comments, questions, observations, and spiritual experiences based on the part that we just read and studied. Kenny, you're...
Trish, before anybody comes in, can I make a request? Mm-hmm. Anybody who's unmuted and has television, radio, stereo, anything on in the background, could you turn it off, because it brings a lot of interference back through. Thank you.
And Kenny, your hand is up. Is that from hand answering or because you wanted to just pop in first and share? Oh, okay. Okay, Larry.
Yeah, I just happened to have it up. It was. I didn't mean to
That's okay.
have it up. It was up for the reading of the book.
Not a problem. So we're looking for hands of people to come in and share on our reading now. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa. I'm an alcoholic. once again, all these pages reading about my life, and things that I wish I did, that I'm practicing now, a lot better, just hit me. Instead of developing new channels of activity, for themselves, meaning me, I was focusing on everything else except me. I'm on two sides of this coin. So, I guess it was less painful or easier, or I just couldn't see. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I couldn't see what I couldn't see. What was going on with me? That's a hard place to be in. Being the alcoholic and living with one too. It's tough. With the growing resentments and being isolated, just all of it. I wish I read this book. I had it for many years up on the shelf. Didn't have a clue. I was, criticizing and getting criticism back. It was just throwing the ball back and forth, and the reactions, and it was just really, really hard. And I'm so grateful to be learning about this and learning about myself and the way I looked at things and the way I took things. And doing this work, and realizing it's fear, self-esteem issues, that fear of abandonment, it just all played a role in my perspective, and it all came out in the reactions when I got reactive. It just spewed out all over everybody, and I'm just really grateful to be learning every day and bringing God in. And there was another one. I know I'll never find it. My spiritual program, my relationship with God. When I'm off now, it doesn't take long at all to know I have to get with God. I can pause it, and look at, why is this bothering me? 98% of the time, if I don't feel right, something's going on with me. I got to look at that. And if I can't see it, I got to pick up the phone. The isolation. Oh boy, yeah, I wanted no part of I didn't need it. Just control my little place here and the people in it. And it just wasn't good. Made people resentful towards me. It made me resentful, and it was just a mess. Very unhappiness. And I'm grateful that I'm learning and getting a couple big lessons for me since mid-December about patience and tolerance. And I think I'm doing okay. And but it's tough. It's tough, you know. But like I said, I'm just really grateful to be learning and that I have all of you in this group. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Shayna, come on in.
Hello, Shayna, recovered alcoholic. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. And thank you for putting up with my delayed screen shares. I don't know, maybe it just seemed delayed on my end. But I wanted to comment tonight first on Lisa's traditionalist job. That I'm not usually swept away by the traditions and or the experience, but you got me. So that was really great. You did an excellent job. And I can relate wholeheartedly because thank God it was the only requirement. When I walked in to AA, I was everything that I shouldn't be. I thought I was the worst person in the room. I didn't, if there were rules, I'm sure I would not meet that criteria as to, being accepted. I have seen, I wasn't drunk per se at the time of my first meeting, but I have been present in meetings where there are, live ones, I guess. But, and I'm glad that we are there. And even if they were disruptive, they were safe, an hour, one less hour, not dead. So I thought that was pretty okay. And hopefully that person I remember seeing, maybe they did make it back and maybe they stayed. Also, something that jumped out in tonight's reading was talking about how the mom is kind of wearing the pants now. I've often, I've been the alcoholic and I've been on the other side as well, but I can relate so wholeheartedly to being the mom that wears the trousers. And even, when dad's not drinking and he's trying to do his thing, it's hard for that power to be relinquished. I got a plan and, I have to be very careful that I don't just trample all over everybody and everything. And when I read that, or I was listening to it tonight, I thought, oh boy, where does it say? This means trouble unless the family watches for these tendencies in each other and comes to a friendly agreement about them. I too am learning hard lessons, and that's through experience. So hopefully I learned something from that. But I think that's all I've got tonight. I look forward to what everybody else has. Thank you.
Thanks, Shayna. Jamie?
Hi, family. My name's Jamie. Very grateful, recovered alcoholic, and good to be with all of you this evening. I love this chapter. This chapter, because it comes after page 103, is about learning how to, for us, the alcoholic, to practice these principles in all our affairs. And home, family, and work are the three most important and first places for me to try and practice them. It's easy for me to go to a meeting and practice the principles. But what happens when I leave the meeting and I got to interact with somebody who doesn't have the program? I spent a lifetime hurting people. And I have to remember that this is a process. It is healing and recovering from it is not an overnight matter, and some of it may never ever become recovered from. Some of it may never heal, but one thing that I know for sure and for certain, that if I do my part, if I follow the work as it is outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I will get better, whether the rest of the family does or not. And the thing that I have to do is to not, while I'm going through it, one, not take things so personal. Two, I have to be easy on them as well. I have to remember that everybody's attitudes and ideas are changing. When we have spent maybe decades living in unreasonable expectations of who the other person's supposed to be. One of the my favorite things in having a conversation about relationships with people and falling in love and all of that, when they go, well, they just ain't acting right. It's like, okay, that's fine. Are they acting who they are normally? Or are they acting, and are they acting as the person that you fell in love with and maybe didn't notice some of these things or overlook them? But now that you see them, or are you trying to, did you fall in love with them for the person that you thought you could change them into? Because we do that. Yeah, I can fix that person. No, I can't. I can't even fix myself. And it is only by the spiritual, living by the spiritual principles that I'm going to get well. In our book, and if we look at a lot of the reading here tonight, what's a lot of it have to do with? It has to do with resentment and harm and hurt of the past. Right? So maybe my Al-Anon wife or Alateen children aren't ready to go do a 4-step on their stuff. Still doesn't mean that I shouldn't do a 4-step on mine and keep moving forward through the practice of the principles. So, I'm going to go with this. Where I got sober, Tuesday nights was a big night, generally about 150 people there, probably 70, 80 alcoholics, a whole bunch of Al-Anons, Alateen, Alatot. It was a family night at the club. And it was wonderful, and you would see people interact and so on and so forth. But what was very interesting was the men sitting in the meetings that were angry, that were struggling to stay sober, while their wives were on the other side of the building doing what they could to try and get emotionally healthy. Now, why do I bring that up? And I'll probably blow the 39 seconds. There's a place in our book. I'll give you a hint, folks. It's on page 64. And it's dealing with resentment. And it says, when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. Okay, yes, it's dealing with resentment in that part of the book. But here's what I've come to understand through pages 61 and 62, which they knew how to write about me 35 years before I was even born. You know, that writer, actor, director, the guy who's full of selfishness and self-centeredness and all that fear and illusion and delusion. They knew how to write about me before I was born. And I believe that all of that stuff that it shows us on those pages is rooted in spiritual malady. And when I go through the process of taking my 4th step, and I see what my true defects of character and my harms and my behaviors and my fears, I'm digging deeper into what the spiritual malady in my life is. And we have a spiritual program that if I live by it, I can overcome that spiritual malady and straighten out mentally and physically. And what I have come to believe and understand is it's not just my alcoholism that is connected with. It's my obesity. It's my anger when I turn into the Incredible Hulk because I get enraged. It's my physical health, my mental health. It's all of it. So this is just reasonable to me. When I live by the spiritual principles of our program, all of the spiritual maladies in my life begin to straighten themselves out. And I begin to get healthy in every aspect of my life. And interaction with my family is one of those things that gets better. Might not ever get perfect, but it certainly gets better. You know, I have watched miracles and the miracle of healing in families here. When that individual felt, just like I have felt, that it will never be any better than this. Yet if we keep doing the work, it will always be better than what it is right now. Thank you. I love you all.
Thank you, Jamie. Hi, Jim.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jim, and I am an alcoholic. I'd like to apologize to the group for during my reading. There was a lot of background noise. I obviously need to make a few more arrangements to take care of this. But anyway, there is one part of this that has really stood out to me this evening, and it's those who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. This dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives. And after thinking about this, I've come to realize that, I've always considered myself to be a very spiritual person, but I never realized that in my search for something to be grounded in my spirituality, I was looking into everything except where the true power for my life was. Having just finished up an in-depth third step with my sponsor and doing a lot of studying and having God literally be active in my life almost every day for me in the past 6 months, tangibly, has really changed my whole attitude and outlook on life. I consider myself happy for one of the first times in my life, and it's all because I have actually found a power greater than myself. See, all the other power that I was always looking for, I was always looking for a spiritual experience or a God that would let me still do my will. And therein was my major problem, because my will and my ego have pretty much destroyed my life and everything around it and everything that I've come into contact with, including other people's lives, unfortunately. This just stood out to me, and I've done a little bit of thinking. There's a lot of truths in this chapter. There really are, and I like what Jamie said about it. It is about the resentments, and how in our alcoholism we can all be some pretty bad actors, but I found that from working these steps, that can change. I'm getting ready to move on to a very in-depth fourth step, and I'm looking forward to once again discovering more of my I'm having a brain fart. Excuse me. More of my problems and stuff, and getting to know myself a lot better so that I can be a better person to the people around me, and especially my family, who I know I have done probably irreparable damage to. But Yeah, I guess I'll end there before I start to ramble. Thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, William.
My name is William Alcoholic. I love reading this, and one thing it does for me, like it gives me like a movie. I could step back and I could see the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous working in the family with another alcoholic, because when it says in there that somewhere along there we've been there. In the time before we got here, deal with more or less telling them about the behavior of an active alcoholic. Now that where he create all these resentments, all this jealousy, and all this stuff going on, and the wife become the head of the house and stuff. Now he's getting sober, and now when he began to get sober, he began to tell them what he began to say the reason why. What now the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which has started doing something that they've been trying to do for years, and I like this part where they talk about the intoxication of the spirituality, and I know that, I remember when I was first getting sober, I sit in the meeting all day long. Man, I went to an open place and sit there because I couldn't. And he was talking about that kind of stuff. They began to get jealous and stuff like that. But one thing he was educating them on is to be grateful that he's not drinking. Somewhere along the line, these things will work out. You know what I mean? They'll balance out, as he began to do that. But right now, he's into it, And though you may not find all of the activities with him that you had before, but one thing you'll have a sober man, it's just great reading, and I like the way it is because I can step back from it like at a movie and see myself where I went through the same thing. And I didn't have no white light experience, It was like a balancing of my life as I continued to do that, but I found something good that was good for me, and I just jumped all in it with whenever I did that, before it took some time for me to get there. I didn't come in right away saying this is for me. I had to be educated on it, just like we're being educated now, like he educated me, the family after. And the most important thing, the same thing that we do for alcoholics. If you say you're alcoholic, that speaks for you. That speaks for you. Because I know the suffering of an alcoholic. Because I've been there and done that. And I know what it's like to recover from alcoholism. Ahead of time, and I love it. So that's it for me. So thank you so much.
Thank you, William. Susan, your hand had gone up and then it went back down. Did you want to come in and share?
My fingers are not working tonight. No, I don't want to share, but I'm sorry about the hand going up and down. I was trying to hit the chat thing, and I kept missing. I've looked back over it, and I'm just going to listen, okay?
Okay. Glad you're here and just wanted to check.
Me too.
Hi, Larry.
Hey, I was just sitting here just thinking of, what I might say on this. When I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I probably I wasn't in the spiritual. I didn't get into the spiritual side. I really, and William was talking about that, and so I think I'll spin off that but I did get headlong into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was already having trouble being part of the family. It wasn't like immediate family since my family was all grown up, but they were already not inviting me to, special occasions and stuff, are the different events that family get-togethers and stuff. But they would invite me to like Christmas, and they'd invite me to things like that. Because the whole family was doing that. They've done that for years and stuff. My mother was still alive, and so we'd all get together. But I was so involved in AA. If AA had a meeting on Christmas, I would leave and go to a meeting. It's just like I was consumed with AA. Whatever AA was doing, I was doing it. I was going meetings everywhere. I was involved in this and involved in that, and it was like, what, even the little things that I was getting invited to, if it coincided with AA, I put AA in front of it. And then I wondered why I wasn't getting invited to a lot of the family things. I could tell that it kind of hurt them. I could tell that it put distance between us. They already didn't understand about AA, and but I was young. I was unselfish, and because I really didn't have the spiritual side of it, at first, but later, as the spiritual element came into my life, and I began to get more grounded in AA. I think that's this chapter talks about it, us becoming more rooted and more grounded, not so with our heads in the clouds. And I saw the value of family, and I began to see how important, and how sacred it is if my grandchildren had an event to be there. And if AA had something, later on, I didn't feel so bad about not going to AA and going to my granddaughter's or grandson's recital or school event or sport event or something. But see, it wasn't that way at the beginning. And I had to learn that. I had to learn a whole different thing, because all of a sudden, I had this new lease on life, but I had to learn how to use it, and it was hard to learn how to get balance in that life, and to live in the world and the outside, along with this newfound freedom and new world that you all had given me. And I'm glad today that I have this life that AA has given me. And I'm also glad for the life that I have in my family now. That's all I got.
Thanks, Larry.
Trish, 1 second before you move on. Mm-hmm. I have been asked how to raise hands. For those of you who don't know how to, and depending on what type of device you're on, there's a toolbar down at the bottom of the page, and you should see reactions. And if you click on reactions, it gives you emojis and all kinds of cool stuff, and there is a raised hand feature. If you happen to be on a phone or a tablet and you don't have that, if you tap it with your finger, it will highlight that screen and it will bring those things up for you, and then you can go to find the raise hand option. So,
and if you can't find that, just frantically wave in your screen and I'll see you and call on you anyhow.
Well, we know you can clap now, Tim, but if you want to come on in and share, brother.
Oh, Lord. Thank you. Yeah, I'm new at all this, so bear with me, and I appreciate y'all letting me into your meeting. I do like this story, though, but it comes at like a threefold for me. Because, I'm an alcoholic, I used to have this delusion that, I used to wear the pants and I was kind of, just because I was the breadwinner. And then my second wife, let's not count how many, but my second wife, she went to prison, so that left me with my children, and I was a single dad for about 9 years. But I was a highly active alcoholic, but I just worked a lot. But I was in the program almost 8 months before I realized that my children were raising me. And that was the hallucinations of, fact and fiction. There for a real long time, I used to always tell my kids, if it wasn't for this, this, and this, you wouldn't have this, this, and this. And they're like, well, if it hadn't been for us, cooking your breakfast and make sure that they literally took care of me. These are just small children. And, I didn't realize until a couple months after that maybe they needed, it's already been mentioned, Al-Anon. And so they started going to Al-Anon, and, now they're messaging me, telling me about Al-Anon. Then I realized that maybe I needed Al-Anon too because of what my father was an abusive alcoholic. And, man, there was some learning lessons in that story right there for me. And it came with some pain. But I had to do another 4-step. Yeah, it's pulling the Band-Aid, but it's rough. And now that, I'm a little bit more sober, I think it might even be time, because I was also what they call blackout drunk. Things are popping up, and I literally have a notebook that I'll be going down, and a song or a light or whatever will trigger something, and that'll pop up. And it might go back to this story about my kids, or it might go back to, something that happened with my father, or it just might be something that I remembered that, I might have, some skeletons in the closet that I need to face myself. So that's a pretty powerful story if you dissect it. So I'm going to keep coming back. I think I probably need it. That's all I got. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Tim.
Brother. Glad you're here.
Glad you're here.
Yes, ma'am.
And no hands, so I'm going to jump in. I'm Trish, and I'm an alcoholic. And, I can't say that I often ended up on the wrong side of every argument. But I often felt like I was on the wrong side of most opinions. If it was going out for dinner, I was always the one picking the wrong restaurant. If it was wearing something out to eat, I was always the one wearing the wrong thing. And for me, that ended up tying in with the isolation. Drinking isolates most homes from the outside world, but after I moved out, drinking isolated me from the rest of the family. And then when I started reintroducing my sober self, or my dry self, and then my sober self, there were differences of opinion sometimes. And I had to recognize that they were still reacting or seeing me as the person who I was way back when I shut them out. And I had to give them a chance to catch up to who I was now. And that was tough, because I wanted to assert myself. I wanted to say, this is what I want, this is what I like, this is what we do. But, a lot of times I was in the minority, and they didn't understand why I was doing the things that I did. And when I met my husband, it was easy. He went to a couple meetings with me and a couple of conventions, and he looked up at the steps and the traditions hanging up on the window shades on the wall. And at the end of the first meeting, he looked at me and he said, now I know why you do some of the things you do, because it was right up there in black and white. My family didn't get the luxury of being able to see that and read that, or see it in real life. But I was that person who lived with my head in the clouds. Everything was a dream. I was going to do this, I was going to do that someday. But I have come to believe that, yeah, God wants me to keep my head in the clouds with Him, but I've got to keep my feet down here on earth. And if my feet are not here on earth, I'm not living in the now, as we talk about in this room a whole lot. But I'm also not living in the present where I can help other people either. And, you know, those other people may be other people in the rooms, but it's also being of service to people at work, being of service to family, being of service to whoever crosses my path. But I realized I had to be careful. Just because I was sober and I had opinions, I couldn't just automatically assert myself into the family with those opinions. I had to take the time to listen to them and see what their thoughts and feelings were too. And not always throw the temper tantrum when I didn't get my own way, not walk out stamping my feet mad that I didn't get my own way. Because, yeah, I had laid aside a lot of that for years. Always following the crowd. Whatever they wanted to do, I would do because I didn't want to make an argument. And I had done that for so many years that, of course, they figured that I was going to keep doing that. And then once I finally started standing up and saying, no, I don't like that, I want this instead, I still get pushback. But I can have a discussion about it now. Going up to see my family this weekend, and I know one of the things I'm doing up there, apparently my dad isn't real happy with, but he understands why. And he appreciates the why. And that's a switch. It's not just I'm walking in like a bulldozer to say, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I want to do, but seeing what can I do to help? What can I do to help the situation? And how can I help them? That's the reality. What can I do to help mom and dad this weekend? It's not all about me. It's not what do I want, not how do I want it, but what can I do for them? Because I don't want to be isolated from them anymore. That was uncomfortable, and it was not real healthy emotionally or spiritually for any of us. But having laid that spiritual malady aside, I have gotten spiritually healthy, but I still have a ways to go there. But at the same time, I don't have to throw myself into them and say, this is what I'm doing, this is what my life is, this is what my spirituality is, because they're not going to get it. But I can sit and listen, I can talk to them, I can spend time with them, and I can just be there and not say anything. And sometimes that's what it takes. And I'm going to stop because there goes that buzzer. Hi, Jamie.
Can't hear you over the music to me. The boombox is too loud.
Too bad.
Hi, family. My name's Jamie, still a recovered alcoholic. And I want to touch on something because Trish was clicking the battery cables together in my brain and making sparks. And I'm going to touch on this, and it comes from our 4-step workshop. In the area where we get into the harms list and especially the sex inventory, which has nothing to do about the act of sex itself, but has everything to do with relationships. And we look at the harms that we have done. One of the areas that we look at is the innocence that we hurt along our journey. Now, some of us have been married once, twice, 3 times. Some of us have been in multiple other dysfunctional relationships in between all of those. And I can tell you in my case, there has always been in-laws involved, children involved, and innocent lives involved, including friends. And one of the things that we take a look at in that workshop is how we drew innocent people into our drama. And we tried to take them to the Jerry Springer show with us to get them to audition to become part of our drama that we were about to put on stage. And all of that stuff is stuff I need to make amends for. Sometimes it's well received, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is Sometimes you end up becoming great friends with that person again that you once harmed. But an example is, if I was in a relationship with you and I went not to my mother, because my mother's going to be all over my side, but I went to your mother or your father and I complained about you and your behaviors and all the things that I'd done, am I not just trying to harm you, but am I also harming them? Because after all, you're their child. They love you. How many times have we taken and used our children and manipulated them with words against the other parent? Oh, your father's this, or your father's that, or your mother's this, or your mother's that, right? And even if we don't use hurtful language, sometimes we use hurtful tone. So it's no wonder that so oftentimes our children and the innocents are badly bitten. A couple of weeks ago in this very study, in this chapter, we talked about that there's the passage there in the book. And it basically talks about the fear and children cowering. You ever been in a relationship and something gets thrown across the room and a child ducks and hides, or goes in a room and hides in a closet or something like that? It may not necessarily be a direct result of our behavior, but it is oftentimes a direct result of still being in as a participant in a very sick relationship. You know, I might not be the one with the anger issues. It might be the significant other. But how's that going to affect the kids and other people? It's going to affect them in the way that I respond to it. One of the things that my sponsor taught me early on, thank God he's still here to teach me things, thank you, Art, is that when I learn how to respond to things rather than react to them, the chances are is it will have a much healthier outcome. Now notice I didn't say a great outcome, but a much healthier outcome. Because I'm not in there trying to be abusive along with the other person. I'll close with this. I have been in relationships and you know, the arguments on, the fights on. They go, stop, time out. The other person doesn't want to stop and take the time out. But here's what I've learned. This is where I get to practice step 10. And I get to take a look right there in the moment of what's wrong with this situation, and not what's wrong with them, but what's wrong with me. In the 12 and 12 in step 10, it talks about when these disturbances arise in ourselves, and talks about the way it makes it feel. So what is it about this situation that makes me feel this way? The road of recovery, folks, is a long, beautiful, magnificent journey. But it is not a destination. When we try to make it a destination, we will always be disappointed. But when we are on the journey, we can enjoy each and every bus stop along the journey. Sometimes we might get off that bus for a little while and get back on. Other times we might say, nope, I've had enough of this one. And that's okay. But we learn how to continue to take our own inventory through the process. And when we do that, we are far likely to minimize damage in the present. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Shayna, do you want to come in and read out our closing?
I do. From page 164. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we only know a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you. Until then. And in Lewisburg Primary Purpose Big Book fashion, we hold our hands up in the screen. This is our virtual way of holding hands, like we would do at a bricks and mortar. But before we pray out, I'll give you a moment of silence for those of us that are still sick and suffering, both inside and outside of the rooms. Here's our moment. And who will take us from shame to grace if we let Him? Our Father, who art in heaven,
Hallowed be thy name.
hallowed be thy name.
Thy
Thy kingdom come,
will
thy will be done
on
on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the power, the kingdom, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Keep coming back. It works if you work it, so work it
Thank you,
because you work
folks.
it.
Thank you, everybody. Glad you were here.
Everybody, it's good to see you again.
Yay!
Still feel free to stick around for a while because we fellowship.
Right. Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Kenny,
Thank
it's
you for
Good night,
Josh.
Kenny.
Good to see you, buddy.